Yo, yo, yo. Gladiator 2 is devoid of the principles that made the original great, namely its change in message when it comes to masculinity. Let's break it down. Gladiator 2 turned its back on masculinity. That's this video. I watched Gladiator 2 and I think the first one was thousands of times better. But I still did enjoy this one. The CGI and some things were far-fetched, but the acting and the storytelling was actually good. I enjoyed that. The costume design was really good as well. Music was lacking. They should have played on our emotions with Gladiator 1 music more. All right, let's go. Let's watch.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you were here?
No, not really. Greetings, friends. What's going on? I've just got back from the very first showing of Gladiator 2 at my local cinema, and to cut to the chase, it failed to live up to the original.
Well, imagine my surprise.
I mean, to be honest, this movie shouldn't even exist. Like the first one was perfect. There was no need for a second one, and of course, the OG will always be better.
Importantly, it's failed men and masculinity. Allow me to explain. But before I do, let's remind ourselves of the original movie, shall we? You remember that, right? The original Gladiator had a solid story, the dialogue was competent, it had suitably resplendent sound design, it was almost entirely practically shot, Steadicams and Russian arms weren't built the same back then, and I absolutely love it. The turbulent jankiness complements the fact it's shot on film beautifully. It's raw, it's unpolished, as is the setting. It's very fitting. Those old Arri cameras give it that earnest analog look that has become synonymous with a fulfilling Saturday night. The shot composition is fairly typical, but the costumes, set dressings, and general sense of theatre make up for a lack of flamboyance in that regard. You won't find any Dutch angles in this Italia. It's basically John Wick circa 200 AD, and that's fabulous. There's almost enough John Wick movies to make a legion. So a Gladiator sequel should be an open goal, right? Well, not exactly. The problem with the original Gladiator movie is that it's far too masculine. And it's far too pleased to be so. The story of Maximus waters the very roots of male nature. The idea that a man would find a way to overcome and or sacrifice anything and everything, including himself, for the sake of his family and honour. The staunch friendship and loyalty that men are capable of. Compassion and camaraderie. The original Gladiator explores almost every facet of masculinity and the consequences inflicted upon us by those who cower from it. This is, of course, completely forbidden by today's modern dogma. I mean, what? You want to make a movie? Bolstering and celebrating raw testosterone, painting masculinity as an incontestable force for good. Ha! Don't make me laugh, you bastard! Yes, unfortunately, unadulterated masculinity was lost to the riptide of modernity a long time ago, I'm afraid. Even if he could still make good films, Ridley Scott set himself an impossible task. A movie with themes that simply cannot be allowed to exist in today's environment. And like I mentioned, the original committed the cardinal sin of not only promoting masculinity, but also warning us of men who do not possess and or strive for masculinity. Absent fathers, the desperate need for affection and approval that can often cripple men, and the fickle arrogance and betrayal that some are capable of. Throughout the movie, masculinity is painted as a source of strength and redemption. Hell, even the slave driver embraces masculinity when the time comes and dies with honour. But never mind that, because this is the 21st century, and we of course cannot have nice things, and also man bad. Don't be a man. Bad man, bad man. Don't be a man, man bad. Bad man. And talking of Ridley Scott, what happened? Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, the guy was batting, and now he's going the way of the Tim Burton. He has the same story arc as Coldplay. I couldn't even force myself to finish watching two of his latest movies, the absolute snooze fest that was Napoleon, and don't even get me started with The Last Duel. Thank God that duel was the last. It took me 3 sittings to get halfway through, and even then I ended up giving up.
It vexes me.
It vexes me.
Terribly vexed.
And that brings us on to the sequel, and if I could explain Gladiator 2 in one sentence, it would be this one sentence from Gladiator 1.
You have a great name. He must kill your name before he kills you.
So, come and sit upon my lap and let's discuss why Gladiator 2 Electricus Boogalooicus was so disappointing. And it kicks off with like an animated, painted recap of the first movie, and the very first person we see on screen It's not Maximus, it's not Marcus Aurelius, it's not Commodus. It's that one female gladiator from the original that was on screen for all of, 10 seconds? The second I saw that, I knew exactly what I was in for. That Hollywood inclusion chart is getting picked off real quick. So the sequel takes place 16 years after the events of the first film, and it kicks off on a farm somewhere in North Africa, and the very first live-action shot of the movie is the protagonist being scolded by his wife for, and I quote, not being gentle enough. And just before you can say, wow, Johnny, that's pretty stunning and brave, it turns out that this couple not only farm together,
Why did I even remember
but fight
that?
together as well.
Wow.
Yes, she's also a soldier. because of course she is.
Oh,
And on the
yeah.
eve of battle, this same woman
I
refused.
mean, to be honest, it wasn't that far-fetched for women to be fighting, especially like if you look at the Vikings, like this is not the Vikings, but with Vikings, like women would fight all the time. And even like 1,400 years ago, women were fighting in some wars historically. So
the right to make an offering, unlike all of her fellow male soldiers, because we need to smash the patriarchy or whatever. But of course, we couldn't have a 2,000-year-old battle scene without having a woman join in as well. Thank you, Gladiator 2. Very cool. But funnily enough, this female warrior uses a bow and arrow and misses all but one shot that she makes while she's on screen. What are you trying to say, Ridley? Huh? And I'm not sure how to put this other than hyper-polished modern filmmaking just doesn't lend itself to historical battle scenes very well. It's too clinical, too stable, too clean, everything that a battle is not. Then, to his horror, the protagonist's wife dies in battle because, of course, I mean,
Spoilers!
She didn't die at home with the kid like in the original movie. Boring. She don't need no man. She died in war because...
and not only that, they made her death the most epic death in the whole movie. Legit, you guys. Like, since we're already on spoilers, there is another woman death that, in my opinion, should have taken a bit more attention, but didn't. Even though it was a woman. But this one, because it was at the start of the movie, and it was the wife, they did this.
Queen, slay!
It's also worth noting that a character has yet to be properly established, so we just do not care that his wife...
Exactly. Like, the other woman, we cared more about her than this one. And her death was like, phew, whatever. Like, what's going on?
We know essentially nothing about anyone.
Because she
and the
was a
only thing
mother.
we do know is that the protagonist isn't as gentle as he could be. So yeah, it's not quite enough to make us care, so it's already trailing behind the original. To make things even more modern and stunning and brave, Pedro Pascal's character, General Acacius, is then ashamed that he won the battle. Good job you work in the military then, mate. The first movie is centered around the fragility of Commodus being an existential threat to the Roman Empire and Maximus putting an end to that whilst also avenging his family. Meanwhile, the sequel is about a dirty man in the desert who goes on a remarkably violent gap year. Yeah. Oh, and also, there's freakish CGI demon monkeys in this one. Did I mention
They're
that?
so
Maximus stood for what is
CGI.
just. This protagonist stands for just farming and, quote-unquote, not being gentle enough and nothing else. There are just no stakes in this movie. Also, rage pours out of you like milk from a tit is an actual quote from this movie. Now, I'm not going to claim to be any sort of breastfeeding expert, but I'm pretty sure milk doesn't pour from a tit. It's not like emptying a 2-pinter of milk. I think it's a slightly more gradual process than that. So not only is that like quite a strange thing to say, it also doesn't make any sense. Acacius then has a struggle session with his wife because he's a cock and doesn't like war. Remind me why this guy is a general again? In the original, and yes, you're going to hear that.
I mean, come on, you know that in this movie he wasn't the villain. Like, he is not the impersonification of Phoenix, or whatever, Felix.
That's a lot. The main driving force behind Maximus's revenge is the betrayal of Commodus and the fact that he ordered the killing of Maximus's family. Meanwhile, the protagonist in Gladiator 2 wants to avenge his wife by hunting down the man who didn't kill his wife, but was stood next to the man who killed his wife. And the reason that man killed his wife is because his wife tried to kill the man that he's now hunting to avenge his wife who wasn't killed by that man.
No, he was a general. So he was the one he's not going to blame the soldier. He himself as a soldier as well, he's not going to blame the soldier. He knows that they are following rules. So he went with the head of the table. Although the head of the table is also following another head, the king's, So at the end of the day, who are we to blame?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. The original was also very raw and definitely lent into realism to great success. It felt genuine. It felt like a piece of history. The sequel, however, is way too Hollywood, way too dramatized. At one point in the Colosseum, a guy is like impaled by this charging rhino and just like explodes in this like cloud of blood and is then like flung across the Colosseum.
Yeah,
and
that
you
does
are
not happen physically.
Reminded that you sat there watching a movie. Immersion spoiled. The entire introduction sequence of the original establishes Maximus as a hero of Rome. So when he's discovered to be a gladiator, it's no surprise that the crowds love him and begin cheering for him. Meanwhile, in the sequel, the people of Rome love the protagonist, and I'm calling him the protagonist, by the way, because throughout the movie he's given about 700 different names. Everyone in Rome loves him.
Right?
They're cheering for him in the Colosseum because, and get this, he threw dust at a rhino. I wish I was joking.
No. He actually first killed a monkey, and they were calling him the monkey killer because he was fighting the chipmunks and the monkeys, and that's it. That's how it started.
That's genuinely it. He's not said a word at this point. He has commanded no armies. No one knows who he is. He just threw a little bit of dirt at a rhino, and now they can't get enough of him. They're screaming for him. It's absurd. And just a quick warning, I am going to be getting into, a fairly big spoiler. So if you don't want anything in this movie spoiled, just skip like 20 seconds really ahead. Quick. You ready? Okay. Yeah. So in the first movie, Lucilla sends her son away because she fears for his life. And in this, we discover that she sent him to North Africa. Yes! Sending someone to North Africa because you're concerned about their safety is the same as burning your house down so you don't have to worry about people breaking into it. The motives of most of the characters are completely cooked. Why? Why is the protagonist doing any of this? Why is he going on this journey? I have no idea. He took his wife into battle with him. His wife died in battle, so he chases down a guy that didn't kill her. It's literally more his fault than the guy that he's hunting. Here's a tip. Don't take your wife to war with you, then you don't have to worry about the prospect of featuring in a lukewarm sequel to a once great Hollywood movie. And then, at the climax of the movie, both opposing armies are just stood around listening to this protagonist. Why does anyone care? He was just the barbarian. Moments...
I mean, they care because they realized who he is.
Before, all he's done is kill a few people. That's literally it. He said a couple of sentences to his mother, killed a few people, and now entire armies are sitting down listening to his story times. I just don't get it. I won't spoil anything else, but man, it's an underwhelming ending. And that's a shame because on paper, the story is a cool idea. I actually really like the principle. It's just a shame about the modern execution and everything around it. Sure, the varnish and violence of this sequel will fool the uninitiated into believing that this is a decent movie, but it's just completely soulless. It lacks any of the burning spirit that made the original great. Gladiator 2 is antithetical to everything that made the first movie iconic. This IP has had a seismic shift in fundamental values. The original teaches us that masculinity, when wielded correctly, is as capable of inspiring an empire as it is capable of felling that same empire. The same cannot be said for its successor. This movie teaches us that men lie, men cheat, men are weak, men are solely vengeful, men are corrupt, and that if you kill enough people, others will listen to you. Here. Oh, and don't forget to smash the patriarchy. This sequel is what the original would have been had it been made today. It's yet another vapid, diluted, morally inverted rehash of something that was good. So once again, I find myself saying, just go and watch the original. You'll have a much better time. You're not missing out on anything.
Like, you feel like all the men in the series have been coming up with awful conclusions that a woman would never make, basically. That's how it sounded like, and you if you were in their position, you would advise them and you would tell them, listen, this is not how you would do this. This is not. And every single person who actually was achieving something was so villainous and so bad, and of course was a man. There were no bad women in this movie. All women were so nice, heroic, Yeah, very sad characters. A lot of them died heroically. Yeah, I think I didn't even meet. There's one guy who was really cool, a black guy, a friend, and he died in like the first 5 minutes of the Colosseum scene, like without even like bringing a character that I really like and just like effing him completely.
Appreciate you for watching this, and I'll see you in the next one, my friends. And as always, a big shout out to the Patreons and the channel members, especially.
It's a bad movie, just a bad. Like it's not worth watching. Just watch the first one. Now I changed my mind. It was like decent to watch it one time, but if you compare it with the first movie, it is actually bad. My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the north, general of the Felix legions, and loyal servant to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. We didn't get any quote like that in this movie. Gladiator has no sequel. Gladiator needs no sequel. 0% of anyone watching this cares about spoilers. They show the whole movie in the trailer. Kinda. For information, the 4 Roman provinces in Africa west of Egypt were considered very safe. No enemies in any direction except for some brigades raiders from the south. The weather was very pleasant. And did I mention Africa was a rich and fertile area of the empire? Yeah, like North Africa, maybe it's not the same what it is today. So yeah, maybe that's why she sent him there. Nothing says ancient Rome like modernity and girl bosses. I love how women are often portrayed as archers in pseudo-historical films when real-life archers usually required more upper body muscle mass than an average male, yet they assign this role to women because reasons. And one of the reasons is no melee weapon, like fighting one-on-one, because physically a man would always like push the woman or hit harder, you know. So having it as a range kind of battle makes sense for women, like hunters and rangers. So I think that is the reason. We can kind of imagine that a woman can best a man from distance. Let's not forget that he made Napoleon into a whining baby. Like, oh my god, that movie was so bad. All right, watch it if you want. It's not the worst movie, but it's nothing special, and it's not needed whatsoever. There's like no need for this movie.